I think when you first start it, you're going to do it wrong. Like there's no doubt about it. You just can't get it right in a sense. But his sort of spiel is like, you do it to just get that one moment in a day, potentially, where everything can shut off and you don't have to worry about the past or the future. It's just, you're in the present, and everything, it's like a psychological unburdening.
Hello friends, and welcome to yet another episode of Couple of Lattes. As always, hasn't changed. I am your host, Jacques Massey. Welcome to season 2. Anyone who is out there watching my talking head, hello YouTube. So earlier in a few of the other podcasts, I think episodes 101, 102, 103, etc., I mentioned that you could find us on YouTube under the Massey Bros account. That is actually not true anymore. Couple of Lattes has its own YouTube page, so you can search for us on YouTube if you do want to watch the discussion, see the heads behind the talking voices. You can find us on YouTube. That's Couple of Lattes, so COUPLE space A space LATTES. Yes. Sorry to insult your intelligence about how to spell couple and A, but that's where you can find us. Anyway, I'm rambling on. Time to sit down for part 2 of my discussion with Juan and Kyrin from the Mere Mortals podcast. Just like in part 1, you can find all of the details for their podcast, their website, etc. in the description below this episode. But now we're going to shift gears completely. Last part of this podcast, we talked about money and how you can make it work for you. Now we're going to talk about meditation and how you can make it work for you. So without further ado, let's dive into part 2 of my amazing conversation with Juan and Kyrin from the Mere Mortals podcast.
Meditation. Let's get into it. This is where Kyrin's going to shine.
Yeah, Juan's kind of had his moment, and now it's
exactly.
The stars are in your eyes now, Kyrin.
Yeah. Kyrin's definitely got the meditation much more down pat than I do. Mine focuses on some other areas, but
yeah. You might have to put your white belt on now, Juan, and take your black belt off.
Yeah.
Have you guys been watching the new Cobra Kai on Netflix at all?
No. I unfortunately don't check out much Netflix. More out of like I used to a lot, and now it's like when I get around to it I do, but man, I'm generally fairly busy with all the stuff that we do, like podcasting and work and whatever. Netflix is kind of like, maybe one day I'll have the time for it, especially when I'm like spending it with my partner, but apart from that, not too much.
Yeah, fair enough. I was drawn to it because I loved Karate Kid when I was a kid, it's centered around the dude who the Karate Kid ended up beating in the tournament. It's absolutely fantastic.
Oh, right. Okay.
Love that. That's cool. Redemption story.
Yeah, man. Love a good redemption story. Okay. Well, you know what? I'm just going to kick straight into it. I'm going to ask you this one, Kyrin, since you are the meditation expert.
Not feel comfortable pulling myself that, but go ahead.
Neither would I.
But he has expertise in meditation, yes.
Yes. And the man can headstand like a true champion. I've seen your videos on your old Instagram. Unbelievable. But anyway, bro, what is the purpose of meditation? And I know this is an extremely loaded question, because anyone who's practiced meditating for any sort of period of time is going to tell you that it's like an incredibly personal and subjective thing, right? But maybe just frame it in some sort of way that someone listening to this right now who's wondering about meditation and wondering if they should make it a part of their lives, would kind of understand the basics of why meditate. What is the purpose of this crazy thing where you sit down in silence for 5, 10, 15, 20, a whole day?
Yeah, for sure. I'll start with a little bit of a personal story, which was when I was quite younger, so like teens, that whole period. It's sort of traumatic for everyone because you have no idea what's going on. But for me, I always had a very active imagination, and I was always in my own head. And one of the things with that was it was very negative self-talk. So I'd always be comparing myself to others. I'd be really unhappy with my anxiety, especially when it came to groups, but then especially with girls and women. Like, just could not talk to them. Same with body issues. Was really skinny as a kid and just always thought like, oh, no one's going to like me, blah blah blah. The whole point of that was, I eventually got over that period, sort of from, I'll say, like 21 to 25ish, just through, I guess, positive reinforcement, focusing on other people, blah blah blah. But it's still in my mind. My mind was still doing that 100 miles an hour, like always thinking, and then it tends to draw inwards. I think that's just one of the things with the mind. You tend to focus on yourself, whatever reason that is. Evolutionary. I'm sure there's real good reasons. So for me personally, I've become, in like the last year or two, for me, what it does is it allows me to almost become dumb in a way. So I don't analyze too much. I don't think too much. It's a sort of space for letting go of things, and then you come back and you are a little bit refreshed. You are a little bit have a different perspective, and the introspection of that is really helpful. So introspection, it's sort of weird because it's like, from what I was just saying, I was introspecting a lot in a very negative way when I was younger, and now meditation's it's a way of doing introspection, but by cutting stuff out in a way, so that when you come back, you're sort of refreshed. I think that's it's hard to describe because, as you mentioned, it is very subjective and how you feel from it. So it's probably the best description I'll give at the moment, but it has positive benefits, I guess. And that's the other thing. It's pragmatic. You do it, and you do it long enough, and you'll see some benefits.
Yeah, the only other thing I was going to add to Kyrin there was, if you looked at the definition of meditating and you thought meditating was like sitting down, lotus position, close your eyes and go away for 20 minutes, I'm terrible at that. But what's the true sense of why you meditate, right? It's to sometimes, disconnect yourself from all the stresses that you're going around you. There's obviously a myriad of ways that you can meditate and what it does. But I mean, generally for me, the reason to meditate and why you would want to meditate is to try to, detach yourself from a lot of the emotions that are controlling you, and to step away from all the stresses in life, to go, okay, well, I can control my body and focus on just one thing, whether that's the breath or some sort of hum or whatever it may be, for a certain period of time. You kind of let go of everything else. So when you step out of that meditative state, you kind of go, okay, I'm looking at everything with fresh, new eyes, right? But I'm not a clinical meditator at all. Like, I'm terrible at meditating. I've tried it a couple of times. 5 minutes, man, this is terrible. But for me, I do it another way, and that's through fitness.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point that you just touched on there, Juan, because I guess for a lot of people, I can't remember exactly what the quote is around sitting in a room by yourself. There's some sort of quote that was really powerful to me. But to get back to my point, sitting by yourself with just your own thoughts is fucking terrifying. So for a lot of people, like, meditation is incredibly overwhelming and really confrontational. And for me, when I first started meditating, and I don't know about you, Kyrin, I know you've had quite a lot of experience with it now, and I think I'm the same. But when I first started meditating, like, it was really, really confronting. And I kind of dove straight into the deep end in a lot of ways. And, like, I ended up like in tears and bringing up all these crazy, crazy deep emotions. And I think for people out there who are listening and wondering about meditation, something like doing what you do, Juan, like going for a run, for example, and not listening to music, maybe just to listen to your own breathing and be in tune with your own body, is a great way to start meditation. Or going for a walk along the river without your headphones on or without your phone, and just walking slowly by the river and listening to what's happening around you, being present in a way, might be a much easier way to transition into maybe a more intense, more involved version of meditation. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, when you're doing those, I think the point is you have to get into a different altered state, right? So just because you're walking by a river, you can't say, "Oh, I'm meditating." No, it's like, it's you have to start off with a forceful act of focus. And if you're doing it right, it's sort of is a feedback loop where you're focusing on your own focus, and then you just go deeper and deeper until you hit a place where there's sort of nothingness. I think and meditation as well, like you said, it can be a lot of different things. I've sort of stopped replacing just sitting down and focusing on the breath in a calm, quiet way by now doing like a real active breathing through the Wim Hof method, which is just big lungfuls in, and it's essentially the same thing but a more active version. So it's definitely trying to find. I think the best way I've heard it is through Sam Harris. He has a really good app, which I found useful. And like you, I think when you first start it, you're going to do it wrong. Like there's no doubt about it. You just can't get it right in a sense. But his sort of spiel is like you do it to just get that one moment in a day, potentially, where everything can shut off and you don't have to worry about the past or the future. It's just you're in the present. And everything, it's like a psychological unburdening, I think.
I want to touch on 2 points. The one that you made a little bit initially that maybe we haven't hit on is people are shit scared to face themselves, right? And the reality of themselves, to sit down and meditating is probably another word for just focusing really deeply either on your own thoughts, emotions, or whatever you want to be focusing on. Now, people can get really scared, and that's why one of the reasons through COVID, right? People were having to be at home by themselves, not seeing people. So you, yourself, and I, right? You get a little bit stuck in your own mind, and that can be really scary if you've got really terrible thoughts. If you've got some, if you're going around in the world and kind of making everyone feel negative, one of those times when you start meditating, you're going to potentially start hating yourself, right? You'll start to see things and feel horrible about either how you're interacting in everyday life, or you'll come across things that you'll never, you don't stop to think about it in your day-to-day life, and you'll go, man, I'm an asshole. Like I'm totally an asshole in doing it this way. But it also makes you realize, how hard it is to actually just focus on your breath. You think about it, it's like, it's such an easy thing. No, man, it is very hard. It's a very hard thing. The other one is, the second one around, whether it's walking or running or anything else. For me, I've always seen meditation as a focus. So, right, you're focusing on something with the ability to, as you say, sort of focus and keep on focusing and be able to focus. One of the ways for me, I guess, with walking, maybe I'd be able to do that, but I think I just let my mind wander, and then I just sort of like be dilly-dallying. Why I sort of compare that, I sometimes would say I'm meditating when I'm training, is because if you ever see me say do a squat or do a particular lift, when I'm in that just a short burst of time that I'm doing it, I'm intensely focused on that particular, and everything just kind of like wades away, right? So I've got a particular like face that I will do. I'm very in tune with my body. I'm not thinking about anything but the movement of that particular weight, right? So for me, it's like that short burst. I could imagine like a really good meditation session would be like that over like 20 minutes of just being so super focused on whatever it is that you're focusing on, that you're always just really active in the presence. Where I think people, and I think that this is where people get it wrong, is that you'll meditate, but not in an active way, almost in an inactive way. Like you'll just think like, laying down and okay, I'll just let myself breathe up and down. Because one of the things people say, right, with meditating is, I tried to meditate and then I fell asleep. Well, like, okay, well you weren't being active enough in the act of meditating, right? Meditating sometimes is really hard. You've got to be really focused on whatever it is that you're trying to focus. I don't know, Kyrin, if you do have a story of when you very first started meditating and you found there was some, like, did you find a little bit of issue or disturbance where you like really were with yourself and then you were like, oh man, this was a bit weird?
Not in that sense, because I think I dealt with a lot of that prior, before I had even the concept of sitting down by myself and analyzing that way. I guess like if you call meditation analyzing your own thoughts, I was doing that when I was a kid, but in a very unhelpful way. But not in that sense. But getting onto the fitness, a lot of things you'll hear, depending what podcast you're listening to, but is flow state. You get in this flow state where everything fades away and whatnot. And that's, just meditation, but with a physical component to it as well. So you hear of that when it's people, especially doing the ultra marathons or, crossing Antarctica, blah blah blah, whatever it is, swimming across the English Channel, they'll talk about where they get into this place where everything fades away and it's just the breath, or just the next stroke, or just the next footstep.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that. I just got shivers when you were describing that, because that's something that, like I've been working toward meditation. I say toward meditation. I don't know why I say toward meditation, but it feels right, because I feel like with meditation, you're constantly working towards something, because there is no end game, really. I mean, Buddha talks about enlightenment, but I feel like enlightenment might be something that you reach if you spend your entire life as a monk in a temple with zero distractions and zero ideas of what happens in the real world. But for the majority of people listening to this, they don't fit that profile, right? So to think that you're just going to sit down and do a few sessions of 20-minute meditations and you'll be enlightened and all of your worries and your suffering will fade away is delusional, right? I think meditation is something you're constantly working towards. And Juan, I wrote down some stuff when you were talking to touch on your point, and I think this connects to what you were saying as well, Kyrin. Distraction is often easier for people than fixing the real problem, right? And that's why we're stuck on our phones or stuck on the TV, or we constantly have to talk to someone, or we constantly have to be engaged. And what meditation teaches you to do is to face that suffering that we hide so easily behind everyday distractions. So like with meditation, for me personally, yes, it has that element of total presence and total clarity, which you can in fact carry on throughout your day, because when you understand how to get into a present moment through meditation, you can actually apply that to everything else in your life in just a phenomenal way. Like my productivity and my clarity has skyrocketed in every other aspect of my life since meditating. But then there's also that element of truly understanding your suffering. So sitting with an emotion, like this morning, I was sitting down and these incredibly powerful negative thoughts hit me. And it was just churning anxiety and churning anger and churning frustration. And the way I kind of think about it is, it's like looking up at the sky and watching a cloud drift past, right? And on this cloud, it says anxiety. And you can try and avoid looking at the cloud, but you never actually fix the problem until you look at the cloud, you acknowledge it, and watch it drift away, right? And I think that's like another powerful aspect of meditation, right? Is to really being able to understand, okay, cool, like I'm going to feel shit sometimes, but guess what? Like, that's okay. Like, it's fine. You're there, emotion. See you later, bro.
Yeah, no, and it's like, with meditating, so there's two steps that, people think. You'll say people should meditate, and it also comes to the whole, like, why should you meditate then? What's the benefit that you're going to get from meditating? You hit it spot on then. Like for you're more effective, you're more efficient with some of the things that you do, so that might be the benefit to doing that meditation. For others, it might be just to calm themselves down. Like one of the things that I find that, whether it's training or what I want to do with meditating, is to be able to almost neutralize my emotions, to have really clear decision making. Everyone has those moments. I even had a moment this today. There was a couple of things happening earlier today. I was doing a bit of work, and I wanted to like almost be overloaded with this particular emotion of being frustrated and go and take some effect. And that's when if you've practiced a bit of meditation and you're getting better at it, then you can understand. You can almost step back and go, oh, okay, I can see this is what's currently taking effect in my body, right? Whether it's anger, whether it's frustration, whether it's happiness. And you kind of almost look at that, from another person's perspective to go, oh, okay, this is just this emotion that I'm feeling. I can obviously choose to go and act a particular way, or I can go and do something else and behave in a different manner. And I think meditation, really helps out with that, because you sit for a prolonged period of time with those emotions. Like for me, one of the things I'd love to do, I just don't find the time to do it. But the fact that I'm saying that means that I should do it even more. Is, in the times when you're really angry, like if you want to know how to meditate, like you want to get the best bang for your buck meditating, I'd say meditate when you're at like an extreme point of emotion, right? When you're really angry, when you're really happy, whatever it may be, meditate at that point. Because what you'll try and do is focus when you're in a super emotional state. And, obviously you're not going to do it best in the first time. But I think someone like yourself, Jackson, Kyrin, if you guys meditated when you were really angry, or like just try to, give yourself 5 minutes and be able to, retrospect on that, you kind of get to see a much more open human being, right? And understand yourself even better, to understand, okay, well, even at these extreme emotional states, I'm able to pull myself back and kind of focus on something else, or shift my mindset and be able to really control my decisions, as opposed to, my amygdala response controlling what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I would not advise actually starting off there. I think
I wouldn't advise it, but I just say it would be beneficial.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's beneficial at some point, and experimentation is key. So that's why there's 10, who knows how many different styles of meditation. Yeah. If you're coming straight at it from, you heard about meditation, maybe you got into yoga and then you hear them talking about meditation, you're like, oh, I should give that a try someday. And then you try it next time that your kid hurts himself and you're rushing to the hospital or whatnot. That's probably not the time to do it. You need to get
hold on, little
it.
Jimmy. I know your bone's sticking out, but Daddy's got to meditate right now.
So I think experimentation was what Juan was really talking about there, which is find what works best for you. So there's transcendental, there's the Kundalini, where it's more the body type as well. There's sitting and focusing on your breath, or sitting and focusing on the next thought that comes into your head. And if you try out all the different styles, you'll probably find one which you're just naturally better at. It's like picking a sport, right? If you're tall and lanky, you're probably not going to be the best bench presser. You're probably not going to be the best, I don't know, maybe hockey player or something. But then you try basketball and it's like, oh hell, this is better. I can do this. I've got a natural gift at this. And I think meditation's sort of like that. You want to experiment with the different styles and find which works best for you, and then double down on that and keep doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good point to add there. And I guess for someone listening in who is really at the beginning of their journey, because meditation really is a journey in my eyes, a continuous journey that ends basically when you die, and whatever happens after this life is maybe a continuation of that, who knows. But for someone who's beginning their journey, however old they are or whatever stage of life they're in, what are like some of the really, really easy ways that they can kickstart their meditation journey?
I think having a person to guide you, or something to guide you, I think is great. Now, this is advice coming from someone who is usually the opposite of that. I like to do everything on my own. I hate being told what to do. I hate having instructions. I prefer, no, I'm going to learn it my own way and I'll find the best way. But this is one of the ones where I tried to do it on my own, I guess. And especially while I was traveling, I would set aside 10, 15 minutes in the morning. And looking back now, I spent basically a year just thinking in my bed, like lying down. It was just daydreaming essentially. And I'd have maybe like little moments of clarity, but that was only good for getting me in the practice of sitting still for 15 minutes. It wasn't good for the actual psychological benefits from it. So yeah, for me personally, I'd say just try out one of the apps. There's plenty of free ones, or you can get a trial. Headspace, we've tried that one a little bit. Sam Harris's app is really good. You can also find plenty of resources on YouTube. So go to any of those, I would say is a good starting point. And that's, coming from someone who usually does not recommend that.
Yeah. I mean, the second one that I'll pull out, which I was going to say anyways, was making time for it, right? If you don't make time for it, or you don't schedule it in a day, especially if you're a really busy individual, you ain't going to do it. Like, you're not going to fit it in, especially because you're not going to see direct results like straight away. Sometimes, like, for me, on a busy day, I am not going to say to you, I'm going to take 15 minutes out to go and meditate, because I know that I've got to go to this meeting, right? And I've got 17 meetings today. Like, I cannot do with putting 15 minutes in. That's not happening. But if you schedule it into a time when it's going to work for you, so
usually right at the start or right at the end.
Right, somewhere where and you make it almost like a non-negotiable. Like, this is happening. You are going to do this no matter what, in a way that's going to work well for you. Then that's going to help you forcefully get started in that way. Because when you very first begin meditating, and I mean, Kyrin, you can input into this, but of the times that I've attempted to do almost the ones where it's like the breath or using Headspace, I've really had to go and put it like in my calendar to say, I'm going to do meditation during this time. And that's the only times I ever really did it. If I then stepped back and went, okay, for the next week, I'm going to do it 3 times a week, I just didn't do it. For me, I'm someone who would schedule it. So I'd probably pull it out and say, put it in use it in a way, or if you want to get started with meditating, either if you're a person who uses a schedule or whatever, put it on there. Put it wherever you use to track tasks or whatever it may be, so that you're sure enough to go and do that and make the time for it.
Yeah, I think it's really important with meditation in particular to be incredibly consistent because it is that continuous journey, right? So if you're doing your meditation religiously every morning for a week, and then the next week you don't do any meditation, the following week when you start up again, you're just going to find yourself in the same spot you were 2 weeks before. So it is essential, like if you're going to go on this journey, commit to it, be consistent with it. And I think it's the same with anything you do in life, right? Like consistency is like so essential. Like we can all kind of relate to each other with the podcasting, right? Like the more consistent you are with podcasting, the more likely it's going to grow. And the same can be said with meditation.
Yeah. And it's a good one because I don't think there's anyone who's really been harmed from it. Maybe if you had, a real serious psychological disorder and just that bit of introspection, yes, maybe that's like the 1 in a million case. But it's not like recommending someone an extreme diet or doing this, whatever it is that you find a lot of benefit from, but other people in general might not. If meditation harms you for doing like 10 minutes a day, you are a very frail human being, and you got some other stuff to work out.
Sort out.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, like, meditating or meditation is one of those things that, I can only think of positives if you're able to do it properly, right? If it's apart from detracting from other things that you could be doing, you're going to get a lot of value for it, especially in the long term. Like, you were talking about it just before, Jax, about, how much more clear sort of mind space you're in when you're thinking and doing things. Just determining like, sure, I want to be in that sort of state, and you got to put the time and the commitment to do that over a long period of time, or whatever period of time you choose to do so to get those benefits.
Yeah, and the other thing is science backs that up. So I don't think there's like any studies out there which show doing 20 minutes of meditation a day is going to be harmful for whatever metric you want to use, whether it's happiness, health, whatever it is. It's a generally blanket good thing to happen.
Yeah, and look, I'll even back that even more. So I listen to podcasts like Tim Ferriss and a couple of others, and they're always talking to really high caliber individuals. And I think Tim sort of calls it out that around 80% of the high performers he's interviewed, which has been hundreds, right? 80% of them meditate in some form or another, and that includes with financially like Ray Dalio, people like Arnold Schwarzenegger. He meditated for quite a long time as well, and everyone talks about the benefits. And I'm not suggesting here that you need to be it's 2 hours, it's whatever works for you, but there's probably enough proof in the pudding that it's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, it's 10, 20, 30 minutes away from just the consistent distractions of life, which our brains have not developed over hundreds of thousands of years to handle. Like we weren't designed to handle being in communities of 1 billion people on social media. We weren't designed to receive thousands of emails a day and process them all. Our brains, as much as we like to think they're advanced, they're still fucking tiny little mushy balls of goo. So just take 10, 20, 30 minutes out of the day to be completely distraction free and allow the supercomputer that's up here to process what's happened to you. Like, it's just like a computer, right? You still need to process information. If you're constantly funneling distractions in, and there's only a tiny hole that it can all fit through, you're going to go crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
So I kind of want to swing it to something that, I don't know, might excite the listener a little bit about meditation, give them a little bit more of a boost for a reason to get into it. So, Kyrin, especially yourself, and Juan, if you have a story too, I'd love to hear maybe a story or a series of stories that kind of show how meditation has changed your life.
Yeah, well, I've got a good one, which is when I started meditating. So what prompted me to actually start? I was in I was renting with this girl in West End in Brisbane, and we like didn't really know each other that much. We met through flatmates, so I was just looking for a place. She had it, so I sort of rented a room from her essentially. And I was coming and going a lot, so we didn't really make friends that much. And one day she went back home to Mackay for the holidays for the Christmas period, and I was in there, and I brought a like cutting board, standard, $2 cutting board from Kmart or whatever. And for the life of me, I could not find it. I was looked everywhere in these places, like couldn't find the cutting board, and I was just, the only reason that could have been missing was because she moved it somewhere. And I got in this absolutely like, I wouldn't call it furious state, but
murderous mood.
Yeah. I was just, I was fuming. I was just very like mid-level angry for a week or two. And every time I would go back to the place and I'd be like, man, this like the cutting board's not here. Why would she take that? That just so infuriated me. And I eventually found it. It was just in a drawer like underneath where it normally was. And I thought I'd searched there, but I obviously hadn't. And it just got me thinking like, man, how much time have you spent over the past 2 weeks just thinking of this one thing and getting so angry at her? And she had, no cause to defend herself in my head, because it was just in my head. And it just got me thinking like, wow, my brain's messed up. Like something's wrong here. How could I waste this much time over something so small, so insignificant, and it consumed, a large part of 2 weeks for me. So that was, I guess, like the reason for starting in meditating, because it just gave me a chance to like actually introspect. I was in my own head then, but I was doing it in a very strange way. It wasn't in a helpful way. So, that's how I started the journey. Like finding myself in such a weird position, finding myself thinking in such a weird way, and going, okay, something's a bit weird here. Like you got to change something up, because you can't keep doing this. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay. My only one, and this is the only time that I've experienced it, where I did meditate for a period of time, and it was just in essence, focusing on the breath. But the story sort of precursory to that is there was a particular sort of happenstance that happened at work where I dealt with a particular situation of of a group of people that I was looking after, where I kind of knew afterwards that I kind of had breached sort of my own ethical and character boundaries. Like I'd gone ahead and sided with particular individuals that still outed another individual, more from the sense of, oh well, I was gonna have to fit in, and there's all these reasons that I made as to why that happened. But in the end, it kind of was some ethical boundaries and character boundaries that I was like, oh no, I'm not happy that happened. And post that, I kind of had these sort of sessions with myself where I would sort of, it was more like 5-10 minute sessions where I'd kind of take away, and I was semi-focusing on the breath, but also semi-focus on that particular scenario that played out, right? And I would just kind of thinking about it, not in the sense of that I was like punishing myself, or thinking about it in the sense like, oh, what could have happened? I just looked at it as the scenario that unfolded and how I had allowed myself to get to that position where I had crossed those boundaries. And what, ultimately what that led to it, I think it was like a year and a half later, something similar happened in a very, very similar scenario of what had previously gone by. And I guess it was what helped me out was being able to take out the time out of my days to think about just why I'd sort of breached my own, emotion and the boundaries that had gone past, that I was able to reflect on it for that later time frame and going, actually, no, I've got to actually make some changes here. So, but for me, look, and I said before earlier, for me, meditating on like an ongoing basis is what I do in that ultra focused state that fitness leaves me with. And the the story that I can leave people with, and the positive side of it is, I've never come out of a gym session where I've been hyper focused and not feel like 100% like amazing in like a happy way. One of the things I'm known for when I work is being stupidly happy at 7 a.m. when I start, or 7:30 a.m. right? And people are like, what the hell, what's going on? Now, one, I'm a morning person, but it's generally preceded by the fact that I've had like a gym session and there's endorphins going on, but I've been so hyper focused that I've got just an absolute clear mind when I get into it. So I think, obviously if people are meditating and getting that experience, you're going to feel this almost euphoric feeling where you're just free to think and act as you want to.
And just turning that on to you, Jax, as well. Like I loved hearing your podcast about your own 7-day silent meditation. Now that it's been a bit of time has passed since then, like, was there anything that really stood out for you from there? I'm sure you had some weird experiences in it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely did. Yeah, I guess before I get too deep, there was a couple things that I was thinking while you guys were both talking, and it kind of ties together with the concept of seeking to understand. And we do this when we communicate, or some of us do anyway. Most of us just talk. But I think what meditation teaches you is first you seek to understand yourself. And when you seek to understand yourself, that naturally carries out in your life and your communication with others. So Juan, like your example, right? When you take some time to understand why you react a certain way, or why you feel a certain way about yourself, or why certain ideas play out in your mind, you could then apply that in a situation like you did, Kyrin, with the breadboard, and be like, okay, let's try and understand why I'm so fucking pissed off at this $2 breadboard that's in it.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy. It's crazy that meditation, it's such a simple concept to just understand what the fuck's going on in your head. And it's so powerful. And so, like you say, so easy to do.
Yeah.
And I guess, yeah, on the week-long silent meditation, yeah, like crazy thoughts. I journaled all of them, which was fantastic to read afterwards. It almost looked like I was on mushies without the bright colors. But yeah, I guess something I tell people that generally ask about it is, my realizations that came from it was, one, I didn't realize how much I still hated myself. And two, I didn't realize how much I still loved myself. But then three, and this was the powerful realization, is how much none of it really matters whatsoever. Because the simple moments where I was completely present and outside of myself, where I was sitting down at a lake and a pigeon would sit right next to me and look up at me and connect with me in a much deeper level, that made me realize that, holy shit, I'm just a pinprick of a much greater conscious that is the entire universe. That was probably like the most powerful realization for me. And I realized as well that I had only really just scratched the surface of the surface when I was thinking these thoughts. And it made me only want more and more to go away and do longer silent meditations, you know, to experience what these monks do when they're sitting in the Himalayas and they're looking out and they realize how little their own bodily experience matters. Because really, at the end of the day, and this might be a little bit whack for a lot of people to hear, and I can understand, because until you experience meditation to a certain level, you can't really understand that we are just these spiritual beings inhabiting a physical body. And once you're able to pull out of that, you can really manifest anything that you want in your life, regardless of what it is. You can manifest joy, you can manifest happiness, you can manifest just enjoying the present, just being exactly where you are. And it's crazy because a lot of like you were talking about Tim Ferriss before, and this isn't a new thing in the West, right? It's just taken a long time to connect in the West because the West relies so much on science. And there's this book by Napoleon Hill, and I think he wrote it in like 1936, called Think and Grow Rich. I don't know if you guys have read it, but
I have, yeah.
Yes. So what he's talking about there, in essence, the entire concept of the book is meditation in some form or another. It's understanding that when we are able to pull out of ourselves and realize that all these weird little emotions that float around and all these things that we worry so much about and care so much about mean absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things. When we can pull away from that and tap into a much greater consciousness, you can literally create anything. And it's how all these insanely successful people have done it. They won't talk about it, but a lot of it is through this concept that we know as a word called meditation.
And one of the things I was just going to get into that, right, was, you know, people, if they hear that, and I know some people could listen to that and be like, oh, it's a little bit too up in the air. What does that mean practically? What it means practically is, as you said, right, when you had the pigeon looking up at you and you have this experience like, wow, actually, like, I'm just this little thing in this huge thing of life. Practically what it means is when you're going in your day-to-day life and something happens that's horrendous, horrible, whatever may be, right? It is unavoidable suffering. You can just laugh at it because you can just go, yeah, cool. Like this happened, but you have the right attitude that you can hit with this, right? That you can go up against it. And that's what it allows you to do. Meditating, getting so deep within yourself and understanding yourself. And I will be clear, you can obviously find that through meditating, but you can find that in other ways as well, right? Just understanding yourself to a really deep level. It then allows you in a practical sense to then go about your day and, yeah, as you say, be present, but, have the right attitude even through the sufferings that everyone's going to go through. And so it's going to help you out. And that's where you've got, individuals who are at the top of the game with maybe swimming or sporting or whatever it may be. One of the reasons that they can go through this unavoidable suffering is because they're so in tune with their body and what their expectation is, to the point that, that's why they pursue that. And Tim, we're talking about Tim Ferriss, one of his latest podcasts, right? And he was talking about when he went on his silent retreat, it was one of those moments that helped him realize that he was, sexually abused when he was much younger. And he'd actually sort of, blocked that mindset for quite a long time until this silent tree was able to open him up. But he talked about how, sure, it was an incredibly difficult thing, but then he was able to understand himself more as a human and be able to move forward from that. So it is just, again, comes back to how many positives you can get from them and learning more about yourself and understanding yourself as who you are as a human in this, what we call life, for whatever how many years is, the better you can understand yourself and control yourself. As you say, you're controlling your physical being through whether it's your soul or your mental sort of prowess. It's just going to be better for you.
One of the things that Sam Harris made me aware of was the only thing you can really be certain of is that something is happening, like that you have consciousness, because we could all be in a simulation. We could be in a vat. We could be, whatever it is. You can never be 100% sure. We've talked before how your senses dictate what you can actually receive as well. So, I'm not seeing all the ultraviolet light. I'm not seeing the X-rays. I'm not seeing all this other stuff. So we are very, in a very certain bound. There's the whole of reality out there, and we've only got a little bit. So I think the power of the mind, like you mentioned in the Napoleon Hill book, is the only thing, I suppose, like second thing from the fact that we're consciousness, that there we have it, is that it's linked to the brain. So you might want to try and like have some control of it a little bit, at least like a modicum, that which you can get from meditation. The other thing to add to that, though, was just because you do it doesn't mean that you're a good person, for example. So that's one of the things that's really funny when you get into is you hear all these stories of gurus and cult leaders and stuff like that who just behave reprehensibly. And yes, they're very good meditators, but they also haven't spent that time. It's almost like you need time outside of meditation as well, looking at your own character, the way you behave and interact with other people, to then realize like, you know what, maybe it's not a good idea to sleep with all the sexy female students and make their husbands cuckold and all the other crazy shit, steal all their money and blah blah blah. So yeah, it's I think the act of meditation is good, but that being said, like there's other aspects of life you need to concentrate on as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. It's just a part of a much greater, I guess, group of things that you need to do in order to live the most just and good life that you can as a person. And things like you say, Juan, dude, I miss the gym so much. I'm in Melbourne right now, so gyms are closed. And you talking about it almost makes me want to cry, because that's like a huge part of my life too. And like I'm not as absolutely gigantic as you are, but I want to get there one day. But anyway, exercise is another one, and journaling is something you can use in conjunction with meditation and eating well. And there's so many different aspects of it. So yeah, I totally agree with you. It's not going to solve all of your problems, but what it might do, which a lot of other things can't, is it might make you deeply aware of your problems in a way that most things can't, because you are forced to see the darkness inside you. And as scary as that fucking is, once you see it, you can actually do something about it.
Yeah. And I liked your terminology at the start where, you're just trying to like look away from the cloud, and the cloud's always going to be there. It's when you focus, and it's when those real dark clouds, right? Like, if you've got some really depressive thoughts or something really, really wrong going on, tackling it head on, and almost if it's terrible and it's just going to be sticking around, kind of knowing, well, the rain or the clouds are going to pass by at some point. You can look to the future behind it, but looking at it directly can also help you trigger, like, okay, well, what can I do about it? I'm just not looking away and letting it just devour my life.
100%. I got one more question before we move into the 4-in-1.
Yep.
And this one's a bit of a funny one, but also something that really intrigues me, because I've had a colorful life, so to speak. I've tried a lot of drugs, and I've got a little bit crazy on many things. But since meditating, I've looked at psychedelics in particular, especially plant-based medicines like ayahuasca and mushrooms, and non-plant-based medicines like LSD, for example. And obviously there's a lot more research coming out at how these things on microdosing levels can actually benefit a lot of people with mental illnesses. And this is not whatsoever medical advice. This is just me talking about my own personal research and things I've looked at. But I wanted to ask you both, like, is that something that's maybe through meditation or through your own research has got you intrigued with psychedelics or plant-based medicines?
Yeah, well, I'll start in that I've been really intrigued in just altering states. So I used to do lucid dreaming, or tried to do lucid dreaming for a while, like inducing that.
And then meditated in your lucid dream.
Yeah, I tried doing that.
Explain lucid dreaming for anyone listening.
So lucid dreaming is where you essentially wake up in your own dream. So it's a way of, some people can do it naturally, where and it's just like a part of their normal life. They go to sleep and they'll wake up and realize they've woken up in their own dream. But for those unfortunates who can't do that, like me, it's a process you can go to. So you can take steps in your waking life that will induce you when you go to sleep, almost like a trigger to make you go, oh, I'm actually in a dream, which it's a very bizarre state. You're still receiving all the things that you normally get in your normal life, but you also know that it's so fundamentally different. For me, the psychedelics as well is similar to that. I don't have a whole lot of experience with them, but I can just say, like, the one time it worked for me, it was like, oh shit, this really works. Like, this is something completely different. And yeah, so like the altering of states is just a very interesting, like, consciousness itself. Like I mentioned, it's like the only real thing. So when you go down that path, you need to be a bit careful as well. You don't go crazy and
well, you've got a story of someone. I mean, long story short is, during Kyrin's travels, he saw someone, take sort of the wrong mixture of a couple of things, and he essentially ended up having to go to jail. And then they kicked him out on the street. And
yeah, he basically took, like, he combined caffeine, weed, MDMA, alcohol, and then another mystery substance which he got from somewhere.
Wow.
All in, like, within 5 nights, in like 5 hours on this one night. And yeah, just had a
loss of mind,
complete mental breakdown of some sort. Maybe he already had a predisposition to schizophrenia or whatever. But yeah, as always with this topic, you got to be really careful, and that's why it's encouraging to see that they're getting back into it with the maps in the US, with what they're doing there, because it definitely can be beneficial. Like, definitely can, but yeah, it's just one of those ones you got to be careful with as well.
Yeah,
pairing it with meditation, and so, like, I'll extrapolate it from not just meditation and then bring it back in. So from all that I've read, because I've never really experienced any of it, right? But all that I've read more so is how, and it's kind of like the altering of your sort of state, where potentially microdosing, which to me is just pushing the boundary of what you just as a human can achieve, right? So you might be at, let's say, a level 7. And for me, I think about it like for training. I was talking about this with Kyrin a little while ago, where, people have talked about microdosing for when you're training, just with something so you can feel more of your body, right? You can feel your muscles moving. But this can also come with meditating. So if you are generally a 7 out of 10, and then you microdose in a safe way to then know what it is like to do a 10 out of 10 meditation session, what it means is when you go back to your normal self, you know what a 10 out of 10 looks like. So then you can aim and strive to try and get to that. But if you only ever know what you're doing a 7 out of 10 and you feel like, oh, that's the highest I'll ever get, then you'll never truly know what that next step is. That's kind of my thoughts with the microdosing thing. But with in a meditative perspective, I could see that you could definitely find some benefits from it. I think it's people can get undone from the few out there who will just do it in a very unsafe manner and then will wreck it for everybody else.
100%. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens with this research going into microdosing and LSD and mushrooms and psilocybin over the next 10 years, because some of the initial research is really, really promising stuff. You know, like the things it can do for people who suffer from PTSD and the general umbrella of mental health illnesses is so far looks pretty phenomenal. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that. On a personal note, I really want to go. Next time I'm in Peru, I'm 100% diving straight into an ayahuasca trip, because I've been dreaming about that like for a while. I think it'll be amazing.
I met a couple of people while I was there, or in like neighboring countries, and the experience, whatever it is, it will be interesting. It'll be a story to tell.
Yeah, before I go into the forum on, I'll share a quick story with you guys. A friend of mine, he was in a really, really bad way. So I'm from New Zealand, and you know, we'd studied outdoor education together, and we'd guided together and all this kind of stuff when I was younger. And he was always like this really like clean, straight dude, like never drunk, never smoked, never did anything but repressed and repressed and repressed all of these powerful thoughts. And one day and he was a super high achiever, right? Super high achiever. And just one day had basically a mental breakdown. And he was so young, man. He was only like 22, 23, but because he'd had all this pressure piled on for so long, and he never allowed himself to sit with these feelings and these emotions, essentially meditate or find himself in an altered state. He went through this savage depressive cycle, and he got onto a bunch of drugs and alcohol for no real particular reason. And he was a kayaker, just like me, a whitewater kayaker, and he tried to kill himself multiple times. And one of the ways he tried to kill himself was to kayak down this really, really hard stretch of river by himself, which is something that you don't do when you're kayaking down that level of whitewater. And people had already drowned there previously the past couple of months, people that we knew. And he did this with the intention to end his life. And luckily he was rescued. And he took that, I think that was his third attempt on his life. And he took that as like a sign, like, shit, I need to do something. And he booked a ticket to South America. And long story short, he ended up going to a shaman and doing the pre-rituals, the rituals of ayahuasca. And he shared a story with me, and I'm getting tingles just thinking about it. But he was sitting there across from the shaman, and he'd just taken the medicine, and he'd done all the purging before, and he was like, "Oh, this isn't working. This isn't working." And then the shaman came over to him, and he couldn't see the face of the shaman anymore. The shaman just reached in to his beating heart and pulled it out. And he said something like, "Discover who you are." And it just zoomed out, and he was on this cliff top, and he was trying to transform into this eagle, just trying and trying and trying to fly as high as everyone else expected him to. And he couldn't. He just kept falling and failing to turn into this eagle. And the shaman said something along the lines of, "This isn't who you are." And he transformed into this mountain lion. And he just knew that this was him straight away. And he was running, sprinting around the Amazon. Everything seemed super real. Like he was this mountain lion, this savage, like masculine dude. And then the trip eventually ended. I think he was there for a few days, just like tripping absolute balls. Yeah. And he came back, and it's completely changed his life. Completely changed his life. And that's like, obviously this is his unique story, right? And this isn't something for everyone, but plant-based medicine and like these other kind of avenues, they may be a way for a lot of people to figure their shit out, you know, other than what we kind of normally think as the usual. And obviously I have no idea if it'll work for this kind of stuff works for many people. Maybe it's just for him, but it was a powerful story.
Yeah, no, look, the only thing I was going to add with that is obviously, you know, everyone's going to go through their own story if you're going to those depths, but pulling it to, just meditating, while the experience might not be as extreme, you can still get, the benefits. So the benefits that he saw there was, he was able to really retrospect and focus on his life and understand, obviously through a particular trip. But it's kind of like what we're saying with meditating, over a long period of time, you kind of are doing some of these processes to go, understanding who you are. So like that sort of that perspective, turning into an eagle. It's kind of like, imagine meditating just in a really short period. You're just thinking about, oh, why am I feeling this way? And you kind of retrospect on yourself more and more and more and more, and dig a little bit deeper each and every time. So, plant-based, I guess, it just gets like right into the heart and pulls out the idea. With meditating, you're just scratching a little bit of surface each and every time, but you're trying to understand yourself to the best of your ability.
Yeah,
sure. Exactly it. Anyway, guys, let's move into the last kind of segment of this, the 4-in-1. So I'm going to ask you 4 questions. I'll keep the questions the same for both of you, and maybe you can just take turns answering them. And then I guess since there's 2 of you, you each get a question for me, and I'll try my best to answer them. It can be whatever question you want. But first question, I want to hear about the 2 greatest investments you have made. They can be financial, they can be personal, anything.
Yeah, for me, it's personal. Facing the most pressing, most like nail biting, heart wrenching fear, which for me was talking to girls. I really, really, really struggled up until I was about 20 years old, and I still just could not have a conversation, with anyone of the opposite sex. And so I went through this period of about a year where I would just intentionally, all I did for a couple of hours a day would just like go out and just try and talk to a girl, like try and meet them, with the underlying, sort of sexual connotations with that, because I, never had a girlfriend, was still a virgin, blah, blah, blah. And, that investment of time, and most importantly, the facing of the fear, because, I had plenty of other fears. I had fears of traveling, for example. I had fears of, like being in a relationship, just all the usual stuff that we all have. But that was the first time I really took concrete steps to actively face a fear. And yeah, man, that's changed my whole life. Like I'd shudder to think where I would be now, if I hadn't done that.
Wow, dude! Thanks so much for sharing. Like, that's powerful.
No, I think you got.
All right, I got two.
No, you go.
My 2 would be, and again, 2 personal ones, but one's turned out to be, professional and financially wise, right? One is a gym membership, right? When I was very, very young, I just decided, okay, I'm going to get into the gym, and, I was swimming and I was doing a couple of things. But for me, being able to be fit and healthy, and maintain, an active lifestyle. So it's an interesting quote. I can't remember it specifically, but, if you lead a, not an inactive life, but just a life that troubles your body. Like, if you're super active, if you're always busy and all that sort of stuff, you want at least to have a really fit and healthy body that can help you like sustain that. So, I've always been a fairly busy type of guy, doing a lot of things, and just being able to get to the gym, and that's why it pains me to hear that Melbourne doesn't even have the gyms open yet, man. Like, it's a bad feeling. But investing in the gym has been obviously amazing for me. And the second one is investing in relationships. So it's particularly, I'm talking about through work, but with partners and ex-girlfriends and stuff like that. Having the right relationships with people and connecting with people deeply and for the right reasons has paid off in multiple times. So, I could look at investments that I've done, right, and sure, made multiples of money 2-3 times. But I can promise you and say that it has been through my investment in relationships that I was able to like multiply my salary by 5 times over, right, in like a year. And that's purely through knowing individuals and connecting with people. So those would be the 2 biggest ones.
Nice. You got another one, Kyrin?
Yeah, well, one triggered, I guess, the memory that, like, one of the reasons I was able to conquer that fear is I started to gain some confidence from actually going to the gym. So I mentioned previously that, I was really skinny as a kid, had body issues and stuff. So that investment in myself, I guess, and that's kind of corny, because it's everyone should be investing in themselves, no matter what you do. It's sort of an investment. But I think we all maybe have like 5 or 6 areas in our life where we know we're a little bit struggling, a little bit, that could be better. I could be more calm when I'm speaking with my parents or other people who get me emotionally angry. I could spend more time in the fitness. I could be watching my weight a little bit more. Whatever it is, we probably all have 5 or 6 or however many, and actually going after them and taking some steps. I think, doing something selfish, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful what you touched on there, guys, and I resonate with all of it. Thank you so much for sharing that deep one of yours, Kyrin. Like, that must have been really challenging to share the first time. I can imagine.
For sure. It's not a quick process, but I suppose the more you share things, it's also the more you get more comfortable with them, and it's like, oh yeah, I used to be that person, but I'm not that anymore.
100%, yeah. And I can especially relate as well to the relationship side of things, man. Like, doing this podcast is one way to create like all these amazing connections in these relationships. Like, I would have probably never talked to you guys in the history of, or the future history of my life, if it hadn't been for the podcast. And like, I've already learned an abundance from both of you, and I'm sure that that'll continue as our relationship grows. So totally resonate with that.
Exactly.
So the second one I've got for you is craziest experience that you've each had with meditation, or if it's not with meditation, maybe just share a crazy experience you've had with anything.
Oh, I think you got to share your meditating in a lucid dream, man. I think that's got to be a crazy one.
That's just a weird one. So I was trying to do lucid dreaming for a while, and I was just failing, and then we actually did like a podcast on lucid dreaming, and it seems talking about it for 40 minutes actually managed to make my brain that very night or the night after go like, hey, there's actually something he cares about. So I sort of woke up in my own dream, and it was very bizarre, just strange experience walking around. You're like, okay, all these people aren't real, but they sure seem like they're real. And you don't want to do anything too stupid in case it actually is, like, you're pretty sure it's a dream, but you're not 100% sure. And I was just enjoying it for a while, and then I was like, oh, might as well try and start like meditating in this. And it was like I was inside of a radio. Everything just started to like sort of crackle and like glitch a little bit. And I ended up eventually waking up from that. So yeah, it's not like meditating in a lucid dream enhanced the meditation process. Just it didn't seem to work that well.
Yeah. No, the only one, I mean, I don't have many. The only one was, I do remember meditating, and it was maybe like my second or third longest ever meditation. But for some reason, I always really struggled to focus on the breath, and it was like this thing that I would more have like conversation while I was trying to meditate. But in this one particular session, I was focusing obviously well enough that I kind of was, in my mind's eye, had myself as well in front of me. And so I was more just conversing with myself in front of me. So I would kind of like be thinking a question, and it was particularly around emotions and why I was doing this. And then this sort of in front of me, this person who was me was kind of telling back to myself why I was doing these things. Just being like the physical me being like, oh, well, I did this because I felt annoyed and blah, blah, blah. And that was like my only time where I've meditated and felt like, gee, I'm really like looking at this from like a third person perspective. Like, I'm not looking at this like if it was just me. I'm looking at it as this is just a human and what their emotions are. And I'm kind of looking at that from an outer perspective.
That's cool, man. That's so cool. Also, next one, number one book recommendation for either finance or meditation.
Oh, this one's an easy one for me.
You go.
Principles by Ray Dalio. This is, I cannot, you look at it at first glance and you think that it might not be too financially specific, but what is contained in that book, especially if you look at it the full perspective. So it's got both if you look at the full book where it's got the historical nature of, where he began Bridgewater Associates all the way to today, and the principles that he built to make the foundation of the company. Those principles is what he runs his hedge fund to make billions of dollars, right? So just that alone, I just found it super useful. I'll leverage that and kind of just split it off. If you haven't or are interested in really advanced sort of economic, macroeconomics and financial stuff, the latest Changing New World Order by Ray Dalio, which you can find online for free with a lot of the chapters, but you can pre-book his Amazon book, which will come out. It is really detailed around how society changes and the financial impacts over hundreds of years that he's sort of articulated. That awesome, wonderful stuff. So
yeah, for me, I'll tackle the meditation part, which would be Waking Up by Sam Harris. And what I really liked about it is he is a neuroscientist and he's very methodical. He's almost overly methodical. It's like there's almost no emotion in him sometimes. He seems like almost too much of a robot. But he himself did like these crazy experiences where, I think he spent like a total of 1 or 2 years in silent meditation over the course of his life, going to different places, doing like 3 months of silent and whatnot. And in that book, he was like I'm very much of a skeptic in a lot of ways, and I need to be proved. I don't believe people in a lot of senses if they're talking about big claims. It sort of needs to be backed up by science, and that book's really good because he's got that mix of the subjective personal experiences, but also the scientific explanations behind it. So that sort of was one of the things that actually helped me convince me to like be like, okay, I should give out meditation a try at least because it seems like it's doing something.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll link both of those in the description. I think Ray Dalio has that Changing World Order as well on LinkedIn, so maybe I'll link that as well. Yeah, great book recommendations, guys. Like really, really good. The last one for you guys, and then you get one for me. This is a bit of a funny one. If you had the opportunity to travel to Mars, knowing that you may never return, would you?
You want to go first?
100% I would, man. 100% I would. 100% I would. And the only precursor I think is if the opportunity was there, and I'm not some like elite individual that is like the first person to go there. It's just like, oh, there's an opportunity, and then we're building something up there. I'd say yes, 100%. I reckon I think it'd just be the experience of like I like learning, and I think the experience that you'd be able to just learn, and there's almost like starting from 0 point. That it'd just be like, wow, what an experience to just be able to leave everything behind that you've already got a preconceived notion that you have to do and be like, well, no, we can just start from scratch and just build up exactly how you want to. I almost like it to be, if you looked at Earth, there's a lot of red tape. If you went there, I think there'd be a lot of that red tape that goes away. But now that I'm also thinking about that, I think there'd also be some red tape about living in Mars. But I'd take the opportunity. I'd take the opportunity.
I don't know what you're thinking, man. I imagine in Juan's mind, he's imagining like alien orgies.
At the very least, that's the pre-considered option if you go to Mars. If you write it in, you pay for that as you go there. So
yeah.
For me, that it'd be a no. I think having to listen to people and do what people tell me to. I imagine there would be a lot of that going on if I undertook that journey. I'd go up to space, but I think Mars would be a bit too far, a bit too many kowtowing to people telling me like, oh no, you have to put your waste in this recyclable, blah blah blah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that would bother me too much.
Awesome.
Good.
Awesome to see two different point of views. Awesome, guys. Well, I guess you each get a question for me, and then once you guys have asked, I'll get your details so that anyone who's listening into either this podcast or the part 1, which was the finance one, they can find you, follow you, listen to all your amazing podcasts, and get around what I think something pretty awesome that you guys are creating.
Good. All right. Well, I'm gonna kick us off.
Do it.
I was gonna say, so you're into photography and a bit of videography, right?
Mm-hmm.
My question to you would be, what do people get most often wrong with photography? Because I like photos and I like taking photos, right? With a Samsung S20, and I've got a couple of cameras that I used to use. They didn't come out with great shots. What do people get so wrong about photography?
Good question. That's hard. Everything.
Like if you had to advise someone one thing to be like, okay, stop doing this wrong, what would it be?
Oh, it depends what you're taking photos of, really, bro. Like if you're taking photos of landscapes or people, I would say, okay, this isn't one blanket rule because photography there's so much to it. I would say look at the 9 fundamental rules of composition. That will level up your photography, whether it's on a phone or a camera, whatever the hell you're using. Understanding how composition works will completely change your photography.
Cool. I'm assuming some of those are like light, angle.
Nope. So it's about composition. So for example, by positioning myself on a third instead of in the center, the human eye is naturally intrigued by that and drawn towards the third. So that's one rule. Another one is leading lines. So like if you take a photo of a long road that just keeps going, the viewer is naturally drawn into the image as opposed to just glancing at it and looking past. So there's 2 of the rules. There's 7 others.
Yeah. No, it's awesome.
It'll completely change your photography.
There you go. Gotta look them up. Good.
Nice.
I'll send you a link if you like, bro.
No, definitely, man. If you could.
Yeah. I'm actually writing an ebook on it, which is funny.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Mate,
but I'll send you a link.
That'd be amazing.
For sure. Awesome. I suppose mine would be, I've really struggled a lot in life with people saying like, you need really good mentors. You need some people to help you out. And that's definitely true. But what I've found is that for me, most of my mentors, like the people that I would consider role models, have always been not ones I've directly interacted with. They're more like online figures or figures from the past or whatnot. So who would you say is like the person who shaped you the most, but that you've never actually met?
Oh, that's another good question. Banger questions, lads. You'd think you guys have a podcast or something, eh?
Yeah, exactly. I think we talked about things like this.
A mentor that I've never actually met. Met as in like in person?
Yeah, in person, yeah. So that can still be alive. That could be a person from the past. You know, maybe it doesn't even have to be a mentor in this, say,
just the character, what they display, something that you look up to.
Something that's just influenced you tremendously.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to sound cliche as fuck, but it has to be Tony Robbins. Like when I was in a super dark place, when I read his books and, you know, looked at some of his videos, he's a powerful human being, and he has a real gift to turn people around. And I don't really read that much of his stuff anymore or look at that much of his stuff, but if you're someone who's in a really fucking dark place, I don't think there is a single person better equipped to get you out of that dark place than Tony Robbins. That man is fucking powerful.
Nice.
Yeah. And I think it's just like just through the energy alone that he brings into any interaction he does, you can just learn a ton load from that. But yeah, I've seen, if you haven't seen anything, I'd probably say like the Netflix sort of little short for Tony Robbins. You'll get to see at least a little bit. But yeah, I ditto that with some of his books and some of these videos. And, you know, if you can go to the full events as well, I think you just take tremendous amount of value from it.
Yeah, he's an unbelievable human being. Anyway, guys, cool. That was amazing. We just sat down for close to 3 hours and smashed out 2 parts of podcasts. If anyone hasn't listened to the first part, I'll link that in the bio as well. But yeah, for you guys, obviously you have a podcast. It's called Mere Mortals. It's an incredible podcast. You guys just hit 10,000 listens, I think it is. So it's growing in popularity. But for anyone listening in who wants to know more about you guys, the podcast as individuals, or they maybe just want to reach out to you and say, hey, you guys are fucking awesome, teach me about this shit or give me some tips, where can listeners find you?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for the compliment. It's very much appreciated. We still feel like we're, you know, just scratching the surface. It's only been a year and
I'll always feel like that.
Yeah, it's always going to get better.
Yep.
As far as interacting with us, the place we direct people to mostly is Instagram. Yeah, Instagram. So if you go there, that's where if you DM us or comment on our photos or whatnot, that's where we'll get back to you for sure.
Yeah. So specifically, it's mere_mortals_media. I mean, you're also going to be able to find us through YouTube. So we publish ours through audio, but we also do it through a video format as well. So Mere Mortals on YouTube as well there. We also have a website, so you can actually see all of the links where we actually you can reach us through. So it's meremortalsmedia.com. So you can find us pretty much everywhere there. Personally, I mean, because I don't know, you don't have too much personal stuff out there.
Zero.
But if you want to find me more for professional stuff, Juan Kyrin at LinkedIn. Post quite a few different things there, specifically around the financial sector and a couple of other things. And Juan_Swanee for my personal Instagram to see all the lifting and food that I eat. Nice. It's a lot. So yeah. But look, I wanted to say thanks, Jax. Awesome to have a conversation. One thing I really enjoy about podcasts, right? You're talking with people for 3 hours, and it's not just talking. You're communicating. You're sharing information. And I think every time I've done a podcast with Kyrin, And every time that I've had a communication with other individuals, whether it be yourself or other interviews, I come away going, man, it felt like I spent 3 hours actually learning some stuff, right? It didn't just feel like I was talking for talking purpose, and I wasn't just chatting about like, what should we do this evening? And it's just boring stuff. It's actually tangible things, and I really enjoyed the conversation. So I do appreciate the time you're taking away to obviously put this together and have that conversation with us.
100%, man. I could not agree with that more. It's incredible. Like I'm still brimming with energy right now, even though we've been sitting here for 3 hours, because like we're social beings, right? Like with communication and having these deep conversations has gotten human beings to where they are now, as opposed to being just another ape on the savannah. So like by doing this, like I get so much out of it, and I'm just so grateful to be sitting here with you guys. And I can't wait to meet you in the flesh one day. And who knows, maybe down the track we'll be doing some sort of investments together, or maybe we'll be meditating, or you'll teach me how to do handstands. And yeah, that's that for me. Like I'm just so pumped that I got to make yet another incredible, powerful connection. So thank you guys.
That's amazing. Look, as soon as COVID comes out and we can go down to Melbourne, I'm gonna go down there and get a Doherty's or something like that, and you can come along with. We can deadlift.
Mate, I'll look like a fucking child next to you. They'll be like, mate, don't bring your kids in here.
No.
It's the worst thing about us doing video. I personally don't think I look that bad, but I'm bigger than next to one.
Yeah, your comment was he looks like a spider.
Yeah,
he's got the spider look next to me. So.
Yeah, dude, your biceps are like the size of my fucking thighs put together.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Thanks so much.
Cheers, thanks, man. Thanks so much for that.
Thanks for listening to part 2 of my conversation with the lads from Mere Mortals. I wonder if your brain is melting as much as mine is right now. What a incredibly deep philosophical discussion about meditation that was. If you want to know more about meditation, be sure to hit up those guys on Instagram, or you can hit me up as well. All of our Instagram links are in the bio below. I also did a podcast a little while ago about my experience during a week of silent meditation. You can check that out. I can't remember. I think it's like episode 90 something, or maybe it's 100 something. I can't remember, but you'll find it. Just search Couple of Lattes on your favorite podcast platform. Hey, on that note, I want to ask you a huge favor. If you can, leave a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. You will be my hero for today. Each review, each rating gets us out to more people, more potential listeners, and helps me grow the podcast, which I'm super, super, super duper keen to do. So much love to each and every one of you, and we'll see you on the next episode of Couple of Lattes.